Parry Talks. Welcome back once again. I feel like I start all these episodes the exact same way, but this is a different one. It's special for a whole lot of reasons. Not just for the guest, of course, because we have a very special guest today, and no undermining that at all. But today, we're actually recording this on the 1 year anniversary of Parry Talks. So we've been chugging away for a year. We've got 26 episodes done, which is one a fortnight, which is pretty good for the first year. We're going to amp that up. Hopefully have 2 unique pieces of content a week next year. That's the goal. But yeah, so thanks so much for listening. If you've been listening this whole time, there are a lot of people actually that have, a lot of the people that we first caught on the first couple of episodes are still listening now. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. And today's episode is a special one. It's with a great guest who I think, I hate the word underrated, but I think is quite underrated in Sydney and in just general culture and dance music and hip hop and just music cultures as well. I've got the one, the only Carolina, Gasolina. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks, and thanks so much for having me. I love that you said underrated. Actually, I don't know. I've never thought of myself as like rated at all. So like, even to be underrated, to think that I'm underrated and people think of me that I higher than what I am, that's kind of cool. That's a really cool compliment. Thank you.
Oh, no worries. Some people say I'm flattering, but other people say that I'm really dry and I have some sort of a monotone voice. But like, we win-win. It's a win. Yeah, I feel that a lot of community leaders can be quite like, not community leaders, but just people involved can sort of think, because it's so outward looking, like a lot of the time people don't reflect so much on the work they're doing and actually like take a step back and be like, what have I actually contributed? So I think that's a common sort of thread between a lot of people that sort of do a lot of volunteer work or, sort of put other things behind them, their own, benefit first. I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like quite often, and I don't know, maybe like creatives do this in general and people that are in this field do that in general, where we just, I don't know, we go through these phases where we just think we're shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that like we're not doing enough. And especially in times like COVID, like what's happening now, where we're not like, because I DJ and stuff as well, it's like we're not actively like going out to gigs and like, also working behind the scenes. I'm not working on any shows or like organizing that kind of stuff. So it's like, I feel like in a way, like I'm almost not doing enough. I'm not producing enough.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So yeah, like I think we can, but then if you take a step back and you're like, oh, well, these are all the things that I have done. Everything's okay. Everything's going to be okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me as well, especially now, it's like a lot of my reward came from like engaging in the physical space where like, even though if I had a tough week at work, if I had, maybe a couple podcasts in a row where it was just like, oh, this is just like hours and hours of work, like to what avail? And then you go to a good club night or like you go to a settings event or you go to like, what really, or even if you just walk into a store where there's like community minded people, or you walk past FBI and see who's out the front, it's like that physical space was so important. So like to sort of feel that get taken away, I think it's probably impacted a lot of, the motivation levels for a lot of people.
Yeah,
especially me in the club world. But yeah, let's get into the accolades.
Accolades.
In terms of like, so last night, obviously, big event with tracks as well. If you just want to talk about your overall involvement there, what you sort of did, how it was, and just a bit of a reflection on the actual experience of it.
Yeah. So for those people that don't know what Tracks is, so Tracks is FBI project, like a project. So I'm the project coordinator and I kind of lead up the whole project. And it's about bringing the music industry to Western Sydney. So originally, Ricky Simonjak, the manager of 1-4 and Solo, and Rebecca Hatch, he kind of led it in the past 2 years ago, and it was in-person events, but because of COVID we've had to go to more a live stream, which is what we did last night. And it's just about exposing young artists and creatives to the music industry so that they can start building relationships, so they can start to learn about the industry as a whole, and just start to like find their feet in the industry. Because the thing with being out thing with being from out west is where I grew up. I actually grew up in Layla Park, which is a little suburb next to Blacktown, in between Blacktown and Seven Hills. So I spent my whole life there pretty much. And I didn't get into the music industry until later in my like 20s. So, because I just didn't know that that was an avenue for me.
Yeah.
And you can't like grasp it. It's not like you can touch it when you're living out west. You're kind of forgotten about, and you don't have access to a lot of things.
It doesn't feel real at all. Yeah.
It doesn't feel real. And, you know, I was really lucky to be exposed to behind the scenes industry, and make those connections just out of luck. But a lot of people don't have that luck. So it's just about bridging the gap and telling Western Sydney kids that they too can be in the music industry, and they don't actually have to be an artist to be in the music industry. They can be behind the scenes, they can be in production, they can be a tour manager, they can be a manager, they can be a bookie in bookings, they can be there's so many things that we can do. And I think it's even more important right now to get Western Sydney people behind the scenes as Western Sydney artists grow, because no one is going to look out for Western Sydney artists like people from Western Sydney, because we just get each other. Like, we know each other, we know the struggle, we know what each other have been through. We've seen a lot of things in our like young lives, in our youth, that isn't normal. So it's just about giving them hope and telling them that they too can be in this position. You know what I mean? I
know exactly what you mean. And I feel like music education is such an interesting sort of sphere. The music industry education is such an interesting sphere in the sort of ways that how impactful it is in the ways it tackles representation, and the way it like acts as a very big representation of what the actual music industry is like. So from your perspective, other than bridging that gap, what other gaps do you think that exist in the music industry education sort of sphere? And how do you think an event like Tracks tackles that?
I think the lack of understanding of Western Sydney, to be honest, like, it's all well and good for like people to like, it's all well and good for like people to like find these artists once they've blown up, you know, and like be big fans of these artists once they've blown up. But the truth is that it's not a new thing that there's so much talent out in Western Sydney. Like, even when I was in high school, which was a really long time ago, like, there was so much talent, and it was raw, like Blacktown Station with your guitars and like breakdancing and stuff like that. Like, I'm so glad I grew up around that, because I know none of these city kids did, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And yeah, like, I feel like the understanding, like, especially like with all the juvenile justice and like in and out of the system kind of vibe, it's really easy for people to say, you got to stay out of trouble, you got to stay out of trouble, you know, if you want to make it, you got to stay out of trouble. Like, but like, they're not walking down the street in Mount Jewett, you know what I mean? They're not walking down the street in Blacktown, like trying to get home and then like getting rolled, like, you know, like, it's just,
I know exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so the lack of understanding, I think, the education piece behind what it's like to grow up in Western Sydney, what it's really like to grow up in Western Sydney, because there's different levels to it as well. You could go to a Catholic school and never experience violence in your life, you know what I mean, and never be exposed to a low socioeconomic friend. But you could go to the school down the road and be exposed to all of that. And have a bunch of friends that go through teenage pregnancy, and by the time you're 18, all your friends have kids, you know? So I think having that understanding is what's missing in the music industry.
Big time.
And I don't know, I feel like there needs to be more, because everyone wants a piece of the pie right now.
Big
everyone
time.
wants to be from the area, you know? And it's really cool to be from the area, but it's actually not that cool when you have to go through a lot of shit.
Exactly. And I feel like one thing as well, it's like a lot of people will criticize, you know, the whole like Western Sydney, like in and out of the system, you know, like just struggling communities, and be like, oh, why isn't there any, you know, individual sort of choice? Just be like, oh, if you don't want to get in trouble, just choose not to get in trouble without actually giving youth like structural and like integrating like actual education and unique education in their communities, which is what track sort of does, which it not sort of does, exactly does.
Yeah.
And like just giving kids a pathway to be like, this is what exists, you know, and those structural like interventions are really important, I think, rather than just being like, just chin stroking from afar, being like, oh, why don't they just be like us? It's so stupid. And I feel like that understanding for tracks is always so important, especially with the movement of everyone wanting to be from the area right now.
I have people in Ryde telling me they're from Western Sydney, and I'm like, what? Ryde isn't, like, I'm not saying Ryde isn't rough, or like there's parts of Ryde that isn't rough, but it's not Western Sydney.
Yeah, it's
like,
different.
It's very different.
Yeah. So I've got so much to unpack. I don't know, I just don't know where to start. But I feel, that's super interesting in the sense that, I don't know, I reflected on my sort of experience being second generation Australian, hearing my parents tell stories of what, because my parents grew up sort of in a city. It's like in an inner city, like Woolloomooloo and stuff. And they tell their experience, and like I reflect that on my experience, be like, oh, I've learnt a lot from these people and that sort of thing. So I reflect on that sort of, you know, the overcoming sort of, there's just a lot there. But I think that's super interesting, especially now how bubbling and how exciting Western Sydney is as an art space, and it's only been recognised now. Why do you think, just personally, that sort of it's only happening now that Western Sydney's sort of got this, you know, big spotlight on it?
I mean, like, obviously, because of the artists that are coming out of Western Sydney are obviously very, very talented, naturally talented, never been trained. You know, they don't come from musical, like, backgrounds where they've gone to, like, art schools and stuff like that. It's just raw talent. And you don't need a label, and you don't need, you know, you can become famous off YouTube right now. So I think the spotlight on them, and also like there's been some gatekeepers like Ricky and Howie and stuff like that have made space for these kids.
Yeah.
And, you know, really brought them up to that level where their video clips are great, where their mixing and mastering sounds great.
All the small things like that.
All the small things as well, because, you know, like, there's artists from Western Sydney that are great, but not necessarily getting their singles mixed and mastered up to scratch. You know what I mean? So I think, you know, there's all those like little elements. Like there's a gate open right now, and there's people that are bringing people in, which is great. And I mean, you can't deny like the talent and the bangers. Yeah. You know?
No way.
So yeah, I think that's part of the reason why. Yeah, it's actually like amazing.
It's brilliant. Yeah,
it's amazing to see like familiar faces on TV and doing really well, because like when I see video clips and people like on MTV and stuff like that, I think of like the people I went to school with. Like they just remind me of the kids I went to school with, and it also makes me really sad in a way, because I think about how much talent they had and the track that they went down, and, you know, whether it be like joining bikie gangs, which happens a lot, like straight out of high school, and, you know, having 3 kids to like 2 different mothers, or vice versa, having ice addictions, sometimes all 3.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the reality of where you can end up. And you can end up like that coming from the inner west. I'm not saying that. Yeah. But
there's a normality to it rather than,
yes,
you know, it being so shocking.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's amazing, but in a way it does make me sad to think that we didn't have those opportunities like 10, 20 years ago. But this is why we're here now, so that we can we can make it easier for the next generation of kids that are coming through.
Yeah, and I think one of the super positive things as well, which sort of attaches to the, you know, it's sad that like the past generations did miss out on those opportunities because there wasn't much visibility, you know, because of social media, you name it. But now it's like there are people telling stories of Western Sydney properly.
Yeah.
Because they're from Western Sydney and they understand Western Sydney. So because of that, people from the outside might be like, oh, I wasn't aware of this, or I didn't properly engage with this, or I want to help somehow, or I want to educate someone, and that sort of thing. So I think there's a big flow-on effect, from, let alone just 1-4 popping off, say, as a moment in sort of Australian music, has sort of that flow-on effect, not just musically, but socioeconomically as well, hopefully, which is great.
Totally.
Sort of back to tracks.
Yeah, go for it.
Obviously a very diverse lineup, and importantly so, a diverse lineup, and the music industry is probably the most whitewashed thing in the world.
That's crazy.
How important is it tackling sort of like diversity and representation issues with like a very strong community radio station like FBI, and how, do you think that FBI, if you just want to like talk up how great FBI is in sort of tackling that sort of thing?
To be honest, FBI is so amazing. Like, honestly, like, I've never worked in a team that is so supportive and just like really, I hate to use the word woke, but they are really woke, and they actually not even just performative allyship. Like, they really put that into action.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm a perfect example of them putting that into action. I started volunteering there probably like 3 years ago, and that kind of like really helped me with my music career starting off. And when Nikki, who's the station manager there, she reached out to me about leading tracks, it was like I was just like, this is perfect. Like, I've wanted to do something in my own community. Like, the project is based in Blacktown. Like, I grew up there. I used to spend so many like days after school in Blacktown, at Blacktown Station. So it's like, there's no other better person to do it, really. So, and just them knowing that, like them being fully aware of that, just shows that they're not performative. Like, they really know, like they really have a good think about what they're doing. And they showed it with the Black Lives Matter resources that they pulled together on the internet. They're so supportive of all the marches. Their diversity is like at the forefront of them all the time. So yeah, I just think it's an amazing, amazing platform. And like, I highly encourage any person that wants to get into the music industry to reach out to FBI Radio and just start. If you can volunteer anywhere, start there, you know.
The best.
Yeah.
I feel like, and like, I can't talk any more highly of FBI because like listen to it like every Sunset show, because I like work from home a lot, especially at night time. Like, Sunset shows on, essays getting written, podcast questions getting written. It's just the best. It's and I fully encourage, like, it's the best spot to just like get a foot in the door and just see sort of how it all works, but at the same time with like such a supportive and welcoming team and like just a lot of smiley faces. It's so brilliant. And
that's not to say they've still got work to do in regards to like diversity within the team, but they are fully aware of that as well, you know what I mean? And they're not denying that at any point in time. And it's just a work in progress, really. Like, everyone needs to work on it.
Exactly.
And white people need to do the work, not people of color, not black people. White people need to do the work. So like, we've been doing the work, so it's kind of like they are aware of that responsibility. So brilliant.
Amazing. Wow. I just need to take a breath. I don't know, maybe it might be quite useful. I think it would be quite useful just to talk through maybe your involvement in FBI and how you got to the position you're in now at FBI, and just sort of like the narrative path.
Okay.
I think that might be quite inspiring and encouraging.
So I actually wanted to get into radio, and they had the presenter training auditions, like the applications, a few years ago. And I applied, and so you had to answer like 5 questions, I think it was, like written format. And then they obviously get a lot of applications, and then they cull it, and you get emailed about an audition. And then it's like a group audition kind of thing where you speak about yourself and why you want to be in radio and what you would do and what kind of show you would do and blah, 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 blah. And then they cull it from there, and they form the presenter training group from that. And so I got through. And then you do like a year of all-nighters. And all-nighters are a hard slog. So you start like 1 a.m. and you finish at 6 a.m. Sometimes you finish at 4, depending on what shift, and you do that once a fortnight for 12 months.
Wow.
So it's a lot of dedication, but I think people underestimate like what it takes to make it in this industry as well. And sometimes you just got to work for free. You know, there's been a bunch of things that I've done for free or for very little money, you know. But I wouldn't take it back now, because I was given the opportunity to work on tracks. And so, yeah, I've just like hosted shows here and there. I've never really had my own show. I've covered a show for about 3 months. But I've always kept that involvement.
Yeah.
And last year I worked for BBA and FOMO Festival, RIP. And Nikki asked me to come back on for tracks. And so in February, I started working on tracks, and it was meant to be in-person events. And then COVID happened in March, and I was really, really lucky because Nikki, FBI, offered to apply for JobKeeper for me, which I wasn't expecting because I was on a contract, a 6-month contract with them for tracks purely. And so now I work on tracks, and I'm programming assistant under Amelia as well. So I help with the programming as well.
Yeah. We've sent you a lot of emails at our
So I've been really lucky, and like I said, I can't thank FBI Radio enough for like giving me a chance and letting me work on tracks. And there's no better feeling like working on a project in my own community. And I feel really lucky to still have a job in music over this time, because I know not many people do. So yeah, I'm so grateful for them.
Big time. Big shout out to Amelia as well. She's
Yeah.
got to come on. She has to. I've been working on it for years.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So we sort of just hinted at it, but obviously COVID, Black Lives Matter, there's a lot going on politically and noise-wise. And I want you to sort of reflect as a DJ as well. And because I know I've struggled, definitely. I've made mistakes, and I've definitely learnt a lot through this period in terms of how to engage with political topics and political discussion, you know, with the platform. So I just wanted to like ask, how have you found sort of tackling these big issues, you know, on your platform, and what do you think that's worked well? What do you think, you know, maybe a lesson you've learned through this sort of weird period?
I've learned so many lessons in the past years. First and foremost, like I'm not black, you know, I'm brown. And in saying that, I'm light-skinned. So I know I haven't faced discrimination as much as a black woman, as a First Nations woman. So I really got to check myself and keep that in mind, because I don't ever want to speak for them, because I know I have in the past, and it wasn't my place to speak on, you know? So
Oh, good. We'll get that out of the recording. Don't worry.
No, that's okay. So I can only come from a supportive perspective, and I've learnt to kind of let them speak first and learn from them.
Yeah, big time.
And be there for them when I can. And that means like little things like not just going when it's trending, like not just going to the BLM march, but going to those Invasion Day rallies, you know, going to the visuals when we have them. So for example, it's like, you know, when the Christchurch massacre happened, you know, going to supporting that community. It's like, yeah, it's a really hard one, to be honest, and it's a really hard one for a person of color that isn't black as well, because I can only say so much, and I'm still trying to figure it out. And I think the best thing I can do is just support my black friends and be there for my black friends when they need, and check in on them, and yeah, like support them in any way I can.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure it out, to be honest, because it is hard, and there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of work that I need to do. Yeah.
I think that's the perfect answer, in the sense that, like, I'm doing good things, but at the same time, always learning, and like no one will ever reach pure wokeness without, you know, making mistakes here and there. And without the mistakes, you don't learn anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a brilliant answer and way to put it. So many directions I can go right now, but I'm super interested in your story as a DJ and how it sort of all started as a DJ, as a mixer, as they say. So did it start being like, I want to be on radio, and then DJing is a really cool tool to have while on radio, or was it the other way around? Or?
No, well, it actually started radio first, and I was covering the hip hop show on midnight hip hop show on Saturday nights, and people kept asking me if I was DJing. Like, I was like, oh, DJ, can you DJ, blah 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 blah, and people actually just like liked my song selection, and I've always had
they like my style, they like my taste in music.
Like, you know, I'm a tastemaker. So I kind of I got sick of people asking me like, oh, can you DJ, can we book you for a party? I kind of just like got sick of that. So I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to learn. And I bought like a controller off Facebook Marketplace for like $150. And it kind of just sat in my room for like a month. And I actually had one day where my friend came over and she was like, oh, this is what you do.
Shout them out.
Basia came over. And she was like, this is what you do. And I was like really obsessed with it for a day. And then it just sat in my room for a month. And then one of my friends, Gianna, who's AKA Hazy, who's just like this amazing artist, like not music artist, but like artist.
Visual artist.
Yeah. That's what it is. She was holding a party at Frida's called BTW, and it was on a Wednesday night, and it was like part spoken word, part art, visual art, part music, showcase thing. And then I saw her at a party, and she was like, oh, like, I was wondering if you want to play. And then I was like, oh, you know, like, I haven't really... And I was like, when is it? And she was like, it's in 6 weeks. Like, it's like on May the 30th or whatever. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it.
That's
like,
a good way to do it as well. Like having a deadline.
Having a deadline. I was like, I'm going to do it. I just book me. Okay, cool. Thinking like Wednesday night in Sydney. It's art. It's like going to be like this small art kind of show, you know.
People just nodding their heads.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, it'd be chill. And I literally... As soon as the Facebook event went up, there was just like hundreds of people like tagging yes, going. And on the night, there was like 1,000 people that had said yes to going. And I was like, holy fuck. Like, I was so nervous. But I had literally planned a 45-minute set from beginning to end. Like, I was just like, I'm going to perfect this. And the night came, and I remember like driving up this street actually, and the line was just like around the corner, and I was freaking the fuck out. Like I was just like, and I remember jumping on the decks, and my face, like my friend was like filming me, and my face was like just mortified.
Was this in the gallery downstairs at Frida's, or was it upstairs?
Upstairs. Yeah,
because Frida's upstairs can get quite clubby, like hardcore. Like.
It was packed. And it was just such an amazing night. Like, it was a super diverse lineup, like all people of color, people that I had like really respected, like Phil Fresh and Naeem and, you know, Jasik, and just like all these amazing like people
it's a huge lineup.
That I really I never saw myself up like in the same lineup as them. And I played, and it was lit. Like, it went off, and from there on, like, I just kept on, like literally the next day I woke up and I had a booking request. So it just kind of went from there.
I feel like the first time I saw you DJ.
Oh, you've seen me DJ?
Twice, I think.
Really?
At Triple One, the Miracle Bowler show.
Okay. Oh God, that was so scary though. That was really scary.
Those warm-ups can be so intimidating, especially when people were just like there for like one band. Like.
Yeah.
But then you played some tracks. You're the first person I ever heard someone play The Message out.
Oh,
like,
really?
At a club, and you're there, and I was like, oh. What the hell? I didn't think someone would play this, and it went off. Everyone was going off. It was fun.
Yeah.
And then at one of the Athletica parties.
Oh, that was a great set.
Those parties are insane.
That was a great set. I really was a bit more experimental with my music then. Like I tried to play more club music. I'm trying to be more experimental and like dip into different sounds now, not just hip hop. So yeah, that was actually really fun. I played Do You Think You're Better Off Alone by Alice DJ, and it went off, and I was like, oh my God, I love this song.
Let's just touch on it. So when you started DJing, where was your taste at? Was it all just hip hop?
Yeah, like I grew up like growing up in Western Sydney. I just grew up with like hip hop music. That was something that I was naturally like drawn to. And yeah, I listened to like a lot of Bone Thugs and Harmony, lots of Tupac, Mary J, Ja Rule, Ashanti, like that sort.
You name it.
Yeah,
you name it.
Yeah. So I was like really into that kind of music, and so as a DJ, it was purely like mainly hip hop. But now that my sound has kind of evolved, my ears kind of evolved because I listen to so much music. Definitely play like to play like baile funk. I'm trying to dip into more like reggaeton, like Hispanic music, Latin American music that's coming out of Latin America, because obviously I'm Latin American, I'm from Peru. So yeah, I'm definitely trying to integrate that more into my sets, because it's actually more acceptable now to play that kind of stuff out. Whereas like before it wasn't, people didn't really know. And in saying that, we grew up listening to music, but my mum was really religious and my grandmother was really religious. So they didn't like us dance. We weren't really allowed to dance and like play music. I'll play a lot of music. Like my parents weren't consistently listening to music. You know what I mean? And my grandmother hated it. Like she thought it was the devil. So yeah, I just didn't have that natural kind of...
Which is a gift as well sometimes, because you're a blank slate. It feels like. But it's nice to know that you're coming back to you're re-finding your identity through music as well.
Yeah, and the last mix I did for Triple J had a lot of like Spanish music in it, like a lot of reggaeton, and I'm really trying to like explore that side of me, because I know that I'm naturally drawn to that sound and it's in me. So I'm really trying to explore that side and integrate that more into my sets. And I would have played heaps of it at Splendor in the Grass last week, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, that's super interesting as well. I think that in our sort of underground club scene, like if you look at the Athletico lineups, a lot of the music is so Latin inspired, and reggaeton inspired, with its tempo and its rhythm. So I feel like that's super cool. And we don't even have to start on the pop world now, like absolutely overtaken. Yeah. You know, just what Drake started.
Totally.
Really.
And Bad Bunny, Bad Bunny's amazing. I just want to live in a world where I'm married to Bad Bunny. That's all.
I'm sure he's listening. He's a big fan. He's a friend of the show.
Out there.
He's a friend of the show. He listens every week. He's listening right now. Bad Bunny.
Oh, gosh.
Talk to me. Yeah, do you think that... I think this is a super interesting thing that I think about a lot as well, where not so much like straight line sort of, I'm Greek, so that means that I like Greek music. Not like that. More in the sense of the values of what like living in a Greek household might be like. I always think about how that impacts my work. So in what ways do you think that your Peruvian culture has sort of impacted the work you do in music, like culturally or like,
that's really hard.
Or value wise, or that sort of thing.
It's really hard because my parents don't really support my music career. In the sense where like they don't... It's not necessarily it's not like they're just like hate it so much, but it's not necessarily something that they want me to pursue. Like for them, success, coming from a real immigrant family, and I was born in Peru and I came here when I was like 1.5. Coming from a real immigrant family that didn't have a lot, success to them is climbing the corporate ladder. Getting like a real job, working
security
a 9
as
to
well,
5, security. Stuff like that. So I'm kind of like going against the grain. But in saying that, like that really makes me work harder. And I think also being a woman, and being a woman of color, I think it's just having that nurturing side to you. And like instilling those values in my work. And I think that's why I've enjoyed working on tracks so much, because I know it's for a greater cause at the end of the day. And in saying that, like even before I did tracks, I thought about applying for a grant myself and teaching DJ workshops for women in Western Sydney. So like those are the kind of things that I'm thinking about now. Like how can this career as a DJ or as someone in music be more than just someone in the scene?
Big time. Yeah.
Someone that's like hanging around people for like the because there's so much of that, and it's gross.
Yeah, clout chasers.
And they're everywhere, and I just want to, like, whatever I do, I kind of just like want to leave an impact, more of an impact than just being the cool girl,
Cool DJ.
Yeah.
Glitter headphones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So that's important to me, and I think that comes from my parents. That comes from my dad. My dad was an activist in Peru. Yeah, so I think like all of that, all my upbringing, and hearing my dad so passionately talk about like rights and stuff like that, human rights in Peru, I know that's all instilled in me still, and I'm going to try and do the best I can.
Big time. Beautiful.
Thanks.
Alright, that was actually fantastic, because I feel like we've covered a lot, and we've covered a lot of serious stuff. And that was a good way to sort of full stop that. And I want to talk positively, because I love Western Sydney. I love multiculturalism. And like I love multiculturalism, but like it's so important to me, and so important of what my vision of Sydney is.
Yeah.
As, you know, you go to Campsie and like you get the best Chinese food in the country, or you go to Lakemba and you have all this great like Pakistani food, and you know, you name it really. It's a big part of like what I think Sydney is. So I just want to ask a couple quick fire questions, but we can sidetrack really far, because I just want to get to know you more as a person.
Yeah.
All right, it's lunchtime Friday, so you can be cheeky.
Okay.
It's lunchtime on a Friday, sun's out. Where are you going for a big feed anywhere in Sydney, wherever you want?
I would probably go, if I could go anywhere, I'd go to La Paula in Fairfield. Mm-hmm. I'm not Chilean, and apparently, like, back in the day, Chileans and Peruvians hate each other, but...
They're not now.
Not now. But La Paula is like a Chilean cafe bakery, and they just have like amazing empanadas, and they have amazing South American sweets, and they have these hot dog. Chileans have this dish called completos, which are like... Chilean hot dogs, and it's just amazing bread with a hot dog with all these toppings. And
I'm just looking at the time. Is it? I'm a bit hungry for 11:30.
So I'd probably go there.
Beautiful. What's the best suburb in Sydney?
Layla Park.
Layla Park. Represent.
Layla Park, because honestly, like, growing up there, I feel so safe there. I could walk around there at like midnight, even though it's fucking dangerous, but like still feel safe. That's the thing about Western Sydney. It's such a community vibe. We're like, as much as we hate each other at times, and we've all grown up together and like fought with each other and whatever, but like I go back there and I feel like I'm at home, and I feel like I get really nostalgic when I walked, even yesterday when I was at Tracks and walking down Blacktown, and just thinking about all the memories, good and bad, you know, really bad and really good, you know. I get really nostalgic, and I just think like I'm really a product of this area, and I've like made it out, and
Beautiful. Alright, who's the greatest rapper of all time?
Tupac.
I'm just trying to take a sip of water. I feel like... Alright, we're going to have an argument.
No one can talk shit on Tupac, man.
I know, you can't talk shit on Tupac. No, don't get me wrong.
He's like dad. He's like God. Without Tupac, like, we wouldn't have had such a movement. Like, he was so ahead of his times. Like, he spoke about so many things in all his songs and lyrics that we speak about now. And he was crazy, so smart. Like... And so charismatic, and just so good looking, and just like everything about him is just amazing.
Yeah,
and like a Tupac, you can't talk shit about Tupac because
I'll never talk shit about Tupac. That's not where I'm heading with this.
You can't talk shit because in Western Sydney he's a fucking god.
Don. Big time. Yeah, that's so true. I'm.
Are you a biggie?
No.
Okay.
I know. I do like. I'm close. I'm Jay-Z till the death. That is the greatest to ever step foot in a room. Like,
that's
I don't know.
Stormzy's favorite as well.
There you go.
There you go.
I feel like that's the argument. People throw like Eminem in sometimes, but
God, no.
no, they can
Fucking
keep
hate
him. They can
Eminem.
keep him.
I hate him.
I feel like Tupac's a good. I'll take the argument for Tupac. I'll take the argument for Jay-Z. I'll
Eminem-
take the argument for Lil Wayne sometimes as well.
I love Lil Wayne, man. His early stuff, like the Carter 3 and stuff like that, was amazing. And you know what? I've went through a phase where I would just listen to Lil Wayne.
It's crazy. It was just prolific.
Oh,
just,
his
like,
era
tape
was
after
amazing.
tape.
But you know who else I really fuck with?
Who?
Young Thug.
Thug is the best. We stand Thugger in my household because my brother is like very into very similar music to I am. Like we could put Young Thug like in a golden frame and hang him on the wall because we just applaud.
Yeah,
he's insane. He's brilliant.
Barter 6 album, probably like top 3 albums of all time for me, for sure.
Yeah. In terms of new era, yeah, he's my favorite in past 10 years. In terms of like innovators and impacts, Thugger. Wow. Who's the most underrated Australian artist?
Sparrow
Okay.
from Mount Druitt.
I gotta check it.
She's amazing. She's insane. You should get her on the show.
All right, done. I trust your word.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Her voice. She's from Mount Druitt. She's
Describe the vibe.
Soulful R&B.
Okay. That's what I need in my life right now. It's very tense, I need that.
Yeah, she's soulful. She's R&B, but she's hard. She's got this presence about her. Yeah, I want her to be huge.
She will be now.
Yeah.
She's being mentioned. She's given a shout out on Parry Talks. It doesn't get much bigger than that. And a highly contested sort of question I do sort of slip into every conversation because I'm very passionate about this. What's the best fast food chain in Australia, in like Sydney?
KFC.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Anyone that knows me knows that I love KFC, and KFC was
goat.
my first job, and I used to work at KFC.
And you still smack it like it's nothing.
I still smack. Everyone's like, "Are you turned off because you used to work at KFC?" I'm like, "No, I love that shit. I didn't care. I used to see the fat dripping down, and I would love that." But yeah, that was my first job. I got a job. My parents that was when the legal age was 14 and 9 months to get a job. So I had to wait to 14 and 9 months. But my mum and dad were like, "I'm back. You better get a job. You better get a job. You're doing nothing. You're doing nothing." I was like, "I'm 14." But yeah, so I got my first job at KFC and I worked there pretty much the whole way through high school.
Huge. That's a big run at KFC.
Yeah,
as well.
I was there for like 3 years.
That's
and
mad.
then I got a job at InSport in Blacktown, and that's when I was really cool. I thought I was really cool. I gave out so much free chicken to my friends. So
The tenders. I had a cousin that worked at KFC, and you should give us you'd get like a whatever box and throw in a couple tenders.
Yeah, so good.
What's your KFC order?
I get a 2-piece. I have a very particular KFC order, and if anyone has a crush on me, if you want to know the weight of my heart, this is what you need to get me, okay?
I'm sure if someone has a crush on you, they'll definitely be listening as well after this point. They've just been taking notes or interview that.
I get a 2-piece feed, upsize the chips,
Nice.
upsize the chips only. Okay?
Yeah, there's no point in upsizing the drink. It just makes you sick.
Yeah, it just makes you sick. And I'm not that big on fizzies. I didn't grow up with fizzies, so I'm like not that big on fizzies. I get a leg and a thigh for the pieces. Must be a leg and a thigh.
Yeah.
I eat the drumstick first, and then I eat the thigh because it's juicy.
Yeah, I hate when you get like the stingiest original recipe pieces. It's so frustrating. It's like, this is no, don't. Anyway, yeah.
And then instead of potato and gravy, I swap it for gravy.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that you can just get gravy instead of potato and
No,
gravy?
I'm a big potato gravy stan. I
Okay.
bow down to the potato and gravy with a spoon.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I just get the gravy and yeah. Well, I used to get a Gay Time Crusher for the drink, but now they don't sell Gay Time Crushers anymore, so I just get a Mountain Dew.
Okay, fair. This is the thing though.
And if I'm really hungry, I'll get an extra thigh piece.
Yeah.
But that's it.
This is the thing, in my opinion. I think there are good KFCs and bad KFCs.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like Lakemba KFC, go away. Just disappear off the earth. It's the worst.
The one in Dulwich, I've just moved to Dulwich Hill right now. There's one on
Yeah, I know.
Canterbury
Yeah,
Road.
that's mine.
It's not that good.
It's not. All the ones in that area are shit. Earlwood, which is where I live, that's my KFC shit.
Really?
Town Hall KFC is the best.
Yeah, it's really good. You know where else is really good? And this is for the Westies. Seven Hills, Abbott Road. KFC is very good.
See, if they're pumping out a lot of chicken, that's when they're good because it's all fresh to get bang
Yeah.
bang. But like in Earlwood, like who the fuck's getting KFC other than me and my brother just getting zinger boxes every second day?
I know.
So like they're not putting out as much chicken as they should.
There's no love. There's no love
There's
in the
no
KFC.
love in the KFC in Earlwood. Or Dally Chill or the Canberra, like everyone in Canterbury Council KFCs can get stuffed.
Yeah.
But the rest of them will keep. Anyway, shout out Canterbury Bankstown Council. That's the best.
Shout out KFC.
The only reason we froth them every episode is so that we get a sponsorship. Final question. You've already sort of answered it, but I need another one. Someone else, you have to like neck nominate someone to come on Parry Talks. Who deserves their story being told, other than Sparrow? Who needs it?
I nominate. Kalimi.
Who's that?
She's a DJ.
Beautiful. Oh no! I know who Kalimi is. Don't worry. Trust me, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
She's a
I just
DJ.
had a mind blank.
No, you're right. Yeah, she's a DJ. I just think she's an amazing, strong woman of color, and people need to hear
Beautiful. Yeah.
more about her. And I think women need to be heard more at the end of the day.
Yeah. Beautiful.
You know, I'm seeing so like many podcasts, and I just feel like they're inundated with male interviews, and that's fine. That's great, but I think right now, at a time that we're in, and we just need to raise women's voices
Big
consistently.
Time. Yeah, because I've seen her DJ at the Atletico events.
Yeah.
She's one in that crew. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Parry Talks, episode 26. Happy 1 year anniversary. Cheers.
Cheers.
Apple poured you a glass of water and you brought your water bottle.
Sorry, cheers.
Thanks for listening, guys. Have a great whatever you're doing today.
Thank you.
Get some KFC.
Yes.